Mark Schwab, I don't know if he loves or hates LeBron James today, but he is with Cleveland 19, obviously dealing with a busy day, getting LeBron reaction stories and everything for TV up there. But Schwabi joins us now. We talked to you during the postseason, and I know that you were one, even during the postseason, that expected this to happen. You didn't see LeBron staying. Nonetheless, when it broke that he was gone, what was your reaction?
It was at that point. It's over. That's what it was. That's the first thing I thought. Okay, it's over. And I knew it was coming. I didn't think there was any chance he stayed. Once Paul George stayed with the Thunder, I thought maybe there's a 5-10% chance he stays, but I still didn't feel good about it. And once that release came out on Twitter around 8:20, 8:30, whatever it was okay. It's over. The good old days, as I said on Twitter, you don't often get to live through the good old days. You just hear about them. We actually got to live through them. And then some would say, well, he only won one title. You know what? For the Cavs, this has been the good old days, and they're done.
Yeah, 52 years without a title. You'll always have that. Interesting, the reaction from Dan Gilbert as opposed to 2010. It was a complete 180. He handled it very well. How is the city of Cleveland handling it?
I think pretty well. There's still some people. I'm getting some pushback on the Twitterverse from people saying he lied. He said he'd never leave, and the usual criticisms, which are not necessarily unmerited. That he kind of strung him along a little bit and put him in a bad salary cap situation, and that's all true. That's a lot of times the cost of winning a championship in the NBA, and so some people are still upset. But for the most part, I think everyone is at peace with it. I think a lot of folks knew this was coming, and even if they didn't know it was coming, they realized this day was different than his last one, where we only had one trip to the finals and never won anything. And this time, obviously, clearly different. They went to the finals 4 years in a row, did win the one championship. Of the three they lost, I can't hear the one argument of any of those where they should have won it. Mm-hmm. So I think things went about as well as it possibly could have.
Cleveland, there's a very good chance, we know, that the Cavs fall into complete irrelevancy here.
Totally.
And I would say that more of the blame on that, in my opinion, is on what happened last year with Kyrie than on LeBron. If Kyrie were still here, Schwabi, one of two things would be true. LeBron maybe would have stayed. I mean, maybe he would still feel like the Cavs are positioned to make another run, and maybe he would have stayed. Or if he had left, guess what, Kyrie? You wanted your team. It's your team. And you still have Kyrie. You still have Kevin Love. With what happened last year, did you agree that was the beginning of the unraveling of the Cavaliers, this spiral now to probable NBA irrelevancy?
I would back it up one step, and that was when Dan Gilbert did not retain David Griffin.
Yes.
And that, I think Griff would have been able to handle this different with Kyrie. But certainly Kobe Altman gets some responsibility here. I mean, he pulled the strings on the Kyrie deal, and you can say they didn't have a choice. And at the time, I didn't think they had much of a choice, but you know what? It's their job to figure out a way to make that work, and they clearly didn't. Unless Colin Sexton turns into an all-time great, they really don't have much to show for that. And that move, certainly, if Kyrie were still here, now we don't know. Maybe he had an issue with the Cavs, and we don't know about it, and he would have left next year anyway, but you would have at least had a guy who was, when he's on his game, probably a top 10 player in the league at a critical position, the point guard spot. You still have Kevin Love, and maybe you could then you step back for a year or two, but you still have Kyrie Irving to build around. They don't have that guy right now, and you don't know when you're ever going to get that guy, because it's not just a matter of getting the number one pick. It's getting the pick in the right year. So that's where they're headed, towards what you said, irrelevancy. And I would agree with, I would say basketball limbo. And on the national perspective, certainly irrelevancy. Nobody cares about him now because LeBron's not here, and they're not going to make any noise for a while.
Yeah, they're going to be on national TV when they play the Lakers. That'll be that'll be.
They had one game.
Yeah.
The year LeBron left, they had one game on national TV, and it was the one where the Miami Heat came to town. Yeah. And I would expect them to do the same thing this year. It'll be Cavs and Lakers, and that's the one time they're on TNT or ESPN or wherever they want to put them.
Visiting with Mark Schwab, Cleveland 19, talking a little bit about LeBron's departure. You mentioned that the Cavaliers are basketball limbo. What is the best course for Dan Gilbert and Kobe Altman now? Do you try to, hey, we got Colin Sexton, still have Kevin Love, some veterans, maybe we can be a 7th, 8th seed in the Eastern Conference with this group, or do you gut it and follow Philadelphia's plan and try to restart this thing?
I think because of a move they made a few years ago, they are forced to gut it immediately. Their first-round pick next year, they traded. I believe it was in the Kyle Korver trade. I might be wrong, but it was one of those deals. And that pick is top 10 protected. So if you want to play this, maybe we'll be the 7-8 seed, fight for a playoff spot, try to rebuild through the draft. You don't even have a pick next year. So follow the logic here. If you don't blow this thing up, they're probably not bad enough to finish with a top 10 pick. They're probably, 12, 13, 14, whatever. So they lose their first-round pick. So then you come back a year from now, they're on this same kind of limbo team. Maybe Kevin Love is gone and they're pretty bad then, but then they don't even have a first-round pick. So then they have to go to the next year's draft to even start rebuilding in the draft. Whereas if you blow it up now and you find something, you get something for Love, and maybe you find a way to get somebody to take one of these other contracts, you stink, you get your first-round pick next year, plus probably a pick for Kevin Love. If you don't rebuild this, blow this thing up right now, I don't know how you're not setting yourself back 2 to 3 years just on the reboot process. Maybe Kobe Altman finds a way, and if that's the case, then great, then he gets a lot of credit. But because that pick next year is top 10 protected, I think they have to get on that. Now, if they keep the pick, the Cavs do, then it rolls over to a top 10 protection the following year. If the Cavs fall in the top 10 in the 2020 draft, at that point, Atlanta gets 2 second-round picks in 2021 and 2022. Nobody really cares about those. So I think they need to get bad quickly and utilize that and make sure they're in the top 10 of the draft each of the next 2 years, which if you stink, you can do.
Right.
You'll get them. And they got to rebuild this thing. If they try to do this, we'll try to make the playoffs. I mean, aside from not getting your draft picks, who the heck cares? You're going to be out of the playoffs before May anyway. What have you achieved? This is Cleveland. We're really used to making the playoffs and losing between the Cavaliers and the Indians. That's old hat. Making the playoffs is nothing exciting. Don't do that to us.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hate to say that to blow the thing up and be non-competitive, but that's probably the quicker course to being ultra competitive than the other way, than trying to battle the basketball limbo, as you put it. The better course is to stink right away.
Totally, and I've heard some people say, "Well, you're going to try to lose, and you can't get." What does that say? That says you're trying to do it the right way. Come on, be realistic. And I understand Philadelphia is a little bit of the exception. They got bad, and you don't always get guys like Embiid and Simmons. You're going to bottom out. You might have an Anthony Bennett or an Enes Kanter or whatever it is. You're not always going to get those guys, but you have to at least try, because if you're otherwise you're the Utah Jazz or you're the Portland Trailblazers or something like that. You're never good enough to win it all. And you can say, well, the Jazz got Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, that's one guy. They need 2 more like him and a ton of depth.
Last thing before I let you go, LeBron now goes to the Lakers as constructed now, and who knows what else Magic Johnson has up his sleeve, but as constructed now, they still, to me, don't look like they're close to challenging Golden State. Now, if they pull off the Kawhi Leonard thing, I mean, obviously that can change. But I'm wondering in Cleveland, I assume everybody stays Cavs fans because that's your team. But do most fans now root for LeBron to unseat Golden State, or are they anti-LeBron, or they just don't care one way or the other?
I think it's going to be a little of all three. I know that's the easy answer. The people that are upset at him for leaving, they're obviously not going to root for him. I do think he's going to be a much more sympathetic figure than before. So while before there were Cavs fans that, I don't want to say became Heat fans, but once the playoffs started, they rooted for the Heat because LeBron was on the team. And part of this is just, remember, part of the Cavs fan base falls into Akron. And so there's folks in Akron that are going to root for him no matter what. And so that representation will always be there. I think there will be more Cavs fans than before that once the playoffs start will root for the Lakers over the Warriors. Golden State's just not a likable club anyway, unless you're from the Bay Area, right?
Yep.
So it's pretty easy to root against them. And I think because the way LeBron had handled his exit this time, I think it's going to be more. I don't think it's not going to be LA East.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
when you had that Cavaliers sentiment when Dallas was playing, it's not going to be like that, but it'll still be some.
And I imagine the reception that he gets when the Lakers come to Cleveland is going to be nothing like that first game with Miami when there was so much hatred in the arena. I imagine it's going to be different than that.
I remember that night you thought they were going to need the Ohio National Guard to stand around the ring. That night was just the venom in the air that night. Now, and there'll be some people that boo, and you'll get some signs, but for the most part, I think he'll get probably, I don't know, maybe 50-50. You know, a standing ovation, whatever it is. I'm sure there's going to be a tribute video. Cavs will handle it differently. Most Cavs fans will handle it differently. And I'll tell you what, I hope the national media does a good job of representing us. You're probably going to find always some bozo burning a jersey. I would hope that they don't portray that as all of Cleveland.
Right.
So I would hope that night, you know, if there's some bad signs out, they show the good ones as well. And I hope Cleveland is represented well, because I think Cleveland will represent themselves pretty well that night.
All right, Schwabi. There's always the Indians, and they look really good.
Yep, I said it. One of the last things I said on our 9 o'clock news last night, I said I need 2 words out the door, and they said, "What do you want to say?" And I said, "Go try," because that's where we're at.
Exactly right. Exactly
that's where we're at. And the boys of summer, they're going to get it together. They got some issues. They'll get them resolved with the trade deadline. They will contend. They will get to October, and we're going to hopefully have another World Series run. It's real. That's a championship caliber rotation. They're the next act. Let's go. Play some ball.